Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Wave 6. This is kind of an interesting wave as you have Goldar without the wings as he was previously released with wings and a slightly less painted sword as a GameStop exclusive. You have regular MMPR Black. We have gotten a golden armor version that was a Walgreens exclusive. Zeo Ranger 5 Red, who is a brand new release, and In Space Yellow, who is also a brand new release. Let me go over all their accessories real quick first before I forget. And you'll see the ones they have on them when I get up closer. But obviously, Goldar has his sword that's a little bit more painted than his GameStop counterpart. You have two extra hands here, one of which is just kind of a grasping at evil hands and then a closed fist. And then you have this swirly-durly effect part. Looks like an Arby's curly fry. He does not have an alternate head. I don't know why he doesn't have Kerrigan's head. And then for Zack, you have two alternate fists, but I don't know where the other one went. Unless this is just the one, but there's only one here, which is just a fist. It's just a why I oughta fist. And then you have the Pumpkin Blaster, just in time for fall. You have two versions of the Blade Blaster, in Blaster mode and in Blade mode, which is pretty cool, and it's better than it just being the closed up mode you got with the Legacy Collection. And then you have Season 2 Zack's head, as the Walgreens exclusive armor version came with Season 1. I like how you can tell by the hair, and it's a pretty decent likeness. Although if I'm being honest, it kind of looks like Walter Jones, but also Chucky. It's like, you stupid bench! And for Tommy, two closed fists here, and then you have both of his sidearms, and they're not in the closed up version, in addition to his main weapon, which you see in his hand, and they're all pretty decently painted. I'm pretty happy with them, and like I said, it's a lot better than just having the completely closed up version of this. And then you have this little blaster effect part, and then you have his Tommy Zeo season head sculpt and hair, although I think he wore it sometimes like this-ish in MMPR Season 2, so you can swap this out for your White Ranger one as well. Oh, I guess that works for pretty much any of them. I mean, you can put this on Ashley if you want, but it's pretty decent. Looks a little bit like the royalty-free version. And then for Ashley, you have two extra hands, just a karate chop slap hand and a closed fist. And then you have this cool effect part, which is unique. I've mentioned in the past that I'm kind of sick of the lightning effect parts, but I like the ones that are unique. And this one is unique because it goes onto both end of her satellite stunner, there we go. And then you have this terrifying thing, which we saw earlier in like the press shots. It doesn't look maybe quite as bad in person, but I still think it looks pretty creepy. Daddy's not here, Mrs. Torrance! Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's go over them individually. So Goldar, I was the least excited about for this wave, mainly because I already have him and I'm not that excited about villain figures in general. But that being said, based on my previous review, my compliments still hold. I think this is one of the strongest releases. It's got some of the best sculpt and detailing. I'm really happy with the way it looks. Like, all the proportions look right. Everything looks good. There's a little hair on there. I'm sorry about that. That's disgusting. I'm the dumbest boy in school. And then you have his blade here, which has these little extra details from the regular one, and on the back you just have these little stubbins for Season 1 Goldar and all that stuff. But all the main details and stuff look the same to me. I'll be doing a comparison here in just a second, but I didn't notice anything hugely different, perhaps to the untrained eye. Get it, guys? Because in space. And the articulation is all the same. You're a little bit hindered because he's a little more cumbersome, but you still have the nice ball joint here, elbow joint, swiveling, leg joint here. It's a little bit hindered by his skirt piece, double knee joint there. You have the foot joint, the waist and chest articulation, and the head and neck, but he has a little bit of hard time because of all this piece. So he's like technically got the same articulation, but he's a little bit more cumbersome. But so basically, yeah, he's a very good figure if you like Goldar, at least in my opinion, but I wasn't that excited about him. But let's take a look at him compared to some previous releases. Okay, so with the Goldars, obviously there's more than just these two. This is the original GameStop release with wings, and then this is the regular one. I mean, obviously. There have been other releases, such as the original release, of which I'll put a picture up, and a 2010 release, I believe. I just don't know where mine is, and if there wasn't one, hashtag Mandela Effect, hashtag DamnItBarry, but I'll put pictures of those up. Like a long time ago, I put like my whole villain display in storage, and I don't know where they are, which is why I'm often missing comparisons for things like those, so I apologize about that. But I know a lot of people wanted to know the differences between these two, and honestly, other than the wings, not a whole lot. I mean, obviously in the back here, like I showed before, you have the little winglets, and it's kind of like Season 1 Goldar, and then his sword here, as I mentioned, is painted with those gold like designs right there, and he doesn't have that one, like big whoop. I mean, yeah, it looks cool, but it's not really worth it. But other than that, they're nearly identical. There might be a small little detail that I'm not catching, but when you're looking at it the naked eye, I honestly can't even really tell a difference in the gold coloring. Like, there might be a little bit of a deeper one here, on his helmet mainly, but it's not enough that I would be like, oh man, this is so worth it to buy two of them. It's just, there's not a whole lot of differences. They're like 90% identical, with the other 10% being the wing and the little sword detail on there. And like I said, there might be a little extra something, but if it's not noticeable to the naked eye, I don't think it's that big a deal. Alright, now we have our boy Zach here. I was pretty excited for this just in general before Lightning started because MMPR Black is my favorite, and for the most part, this is a solid figure. I don't really have too many complaints about it outside of some personal complaints about the helmet, which I'll get to, but the power axe looks good, and you can shift the mode here, which is cool. Crash the mode, guys. Get it, guys? Because Young Justice. And then you have the details there on the Morpher, which are pretty decent, and it's pretty hard to mess up the rest of the details on his body, as it's just literally black and white. You have the same part for the coarse articulation. I don't have any loose joint problems with any of these guys, so that's just a nice thing. I haven't had too many problems with that, but it's always nice to not have to worry about that. So you have pretty much the same things you'd always expect. But my main issue comes with the head sculpt on this looking off. There is something off about the Black Ranger head sculpt. It's not quite as bad as MMPR Red's, but there's just something strange about the boxiness of it that doesn't ring true to what it looks like in the show for me. But let's go ahead and take a look at the previous versions so you can sort of see a little bit what I'm talking about. Okay, so for the Black Rangers, here we obviously have the other Lightning release with the gold armor, which the obvious difference there is the gold armor, but there are some differences in the helmet and whatnot, and I'll get to that last. Then we have the Legacy release. This is the metallic version because that's the one I had on hand quickly, so obviously you'll notice a little bit of a difference with him having more of a grayish metallic look, but rest assured the shade of black on the Lightning, or the Legacy one, the original one, is comparable. I mean, these are all just normal black. Wait, how dare you? Obsidian, Onyx, Midnight. But you know what I mean, so that, like, there's no reason to be like, oh, the black shade on this is so much better than the Legacy one. Like, no, they're both fine. This dude's just metallic. And now they've gone metallics. Anyway, let's continue. And then this is obviously the figure art, and then this is the MMPR 2010 release. There's obviously a few others, such as the Automorphin and the Legacy 5-inch release, which I didn't have on hand. But as far as the Automorphin goes, if you're familiar with PR, you know how that compares to these, and it's not really the most screen-accurate figure. But so, let's talk about these two first. You can see the obvious differences between Legacy and Lightning we always see, which is the muscly mold and stuff like that. I do kind of still like the helmet on the Legacy one. As I mentioned, I still don't think the Lightning one is perfect. I think they both have their merits. I think if they met and then, you know, that would be the shirt that they burnt. I think that would be the perfect helmet if those two met, because I think the Legacy one has a little bit more of the rounded look to it, whereas this one kind of has like a weird square pinched look to it. The Lightning one does have a little bit more of a nice glossy feel to it, but neither one are perfect, but I like both head sculpts. But obviously this is a little bit more of an accurate build. He does have a little bit more of a detailed axe though, like the power coin's actually detailed in, and it looks a little bit better in some instances compared to that, which is just kind of neat. And then you have the figure art here, which whenever we get the Lightning figures, it makes me realize how skinny the figure arts are. The head sculpt's not bad on that one. It's a little bit small, but it's actually pretty good, pretty close, just a little bit small, but he's very skinny. He does have some nice details and obviously some nice detailed weapons, but I think that these ones just look a little healthier. But I know some people just still love the figure arts. And then obviously the 2010 ones, just kind of there for fun. But now let's talk about comparison of these two. So primarily I wanted to draw attention to, for some reason I feel like this seems a little more rounded. It could be my imagination. But I wanted to show that the paint details on the new one are actually a lot tighter. Maybe it's because this is a Walgreens one, but you can see sort of the paint job on the tusks and whatnot is a little messier. I don't know if you can see it, but on the mouths, this one looks a little messier on the Zach release from Walgreens, whereas this one's much more of an even, shiny paint. This just looks like it was more touched up. This looks like a rush job, and there is actually some differences in the axe. I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but the new one has a little bit of a darker yellow tinge to it, so there are some slight differences there. Obviously, if you want the gold armor, you're going to want to get the gold armor one, and maybe one on the shelf had a better paint job than mine, but at least between mine, I did notice a paint quality difference between the helmets on these two, and this one also seems a little bit more rounded. I don't know if it's my imagination or not. Alright, now we have Zeo Ranger 5 Red. As I mentioned, same articulation, so I don't need to go over it. His weapon is pretty well detailed. It's pretty hard to mess up too, because it's only a couple different colors, but the gold looks good, the red star looks good sticking off of it, and the silver paint looks good for the blade. Now, my main concern with him was going to be about his head sculpt, because in the pictures for the promos, it looked a little bit fat, and it still feels a little bit big, just a little bit, but honestly, it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Like, it's still slightly off, but I was pretty pleased with this. I think it looks really nice, actually. Like, not perfect, but I was like, dang, this is actually a really nice Zeo Ranger 5 figure. The gold paint looks nice here. You got nice details there, nice details on the belt. The proportions are nice. Like I said, not perfect, but I was pretty pleased with this. Maybe the helmet could be a little bit smaller, but hey, I'm happy for it for a nice $20 figure. But let's look at the previous versions, and especially the Absolute Elite version from the 90s. Okay, so out of my Zeo Ranger 5 collection, the only ones I couldn't get in here... Wow, thanks! Way to blow it! So out of my Zeo 5 Red collection, the only ones that I couldn't get in here was the bike one and the Automorphin one. Not because they couldn't fit, but because I couldn't find them. So obviously, right here, you have the Star Wars Black Series. No, I'm kidding. This is the Lightning one you've been watching the whole time. Legacy, and then back here, just for fun, this was the Musclehead 15th Anniversary Red Ranger collection figures. These were almost like a representation of like 90s PR comic ones, like almost the most comedically Musclehead ones of all time. I enjoyed these when they came out though, because it was before we got lots of Legacy releases, but I thought it would be fun to include him in here, even though he's obviously not really a comparison for accuracy. And then you have, of course, right here, the Action Hero from the Megaforce line, and then the obvious winner, most accurate of all time, not even just Zeo 5, of all Ranger figures. You want your Rangers to look like the thumb monsters from Spy Kids. I've said this 1,000 times. You get the gist of it. And you know, classic Lightning and Legacy comparisons. I think that the helmet was okay on the Legacy, but it's a little bit too rounded. It looks like an egg. And then there's the obvious muscle-headed proportions. And there's been some cool ones over the years, and I think this one's surprisingly underrated for the scale. But that being said, I do think this is the overall best one we've gotten, and I'm pretty happy with it. Alright, now we have Ashley dipping our toe into In Space here. Now, I do have some slight problems with the head sculpt having some paint inconsistencies, which is really the only major ones I got in this wave, thankfully. Especially for her, because she's only packed one per wave, so if you find a messed up one, you're going to have to travel to several different Targets or Walmarts to correct that. But I have a little bit of a white stripe there, and then this little maddening bit where the line doesn't line up here, and that really kind of bugs me. But for the most part, I think the helmet's pretty decent. It feels a little bit off to me. It could just be me. I think the perfect marriage is between the Lightning and the Legacy, but we'll get to that in the comparison. And the color's a little bit darker, but I think that the sculpt is a lot better, a lot more of a natural looking girl body. That sounds weird to say, but you know what I mean. The old Bandai ones were always like extreme comic book proportions, and this one certainly looks a lot better. They have like the nice little bits where it looks like the cloth folding. Oh, I almost forgot the accessory, the extra Astro Blaster here, which looks a little bit pale, but still solid. And the articulation for her is the same, other than just being the smaller girl body, and you actually don't have that much hindrance on the skirt. It's a really nice, flexible skirt piece that allows for some good range of movement. You have the Satellite Stunner right here, not Satellite Stunner, Star Slinger, there we go. It also looks a little bit like Bob the Builder colors, but you know, nothing too bad. I'm not in this for how detailed the Star Slinger is, to be honest, but mostly a pretty solid figure, especially for In Space where we have pretty slim pickings. But let's see how it fares compared to previous releases. Okay, so we have our three Ashleys here. This is the original release from the 90s, obviously the Lightning Collection one, and then the Legacy one. You can see the differences here. This is kind of much more of a stiff figure whose gimmick was that the head lights up, but the light's battery is out, and she has certain abilities that some may consider to be unnatural. And obviously the Legacy one is a lot taller, and you kind of have like the comic booky warrior, kind of more muscly with more endowed proportions. But honestly, I thought the Legacy ones weren't too bad. Like, there's certainly been worse ones, and the girl molds on this one weren't that bad for me, and I think these are pretty decent. I actually kind of like aspects of the head sculpt better on this one. Like, this is one of those cases where I feel the perfect head sculpt for me would be kind of a merger between these two. Plus, this one doesn't have that weird line discrepancy and whatnot. And I can't really decide which one's the most accurate color. These ones are both kind of a more pale yellow, while this one's a darker one. I guess it kind of depends on the shot of the footage you're looking at, but I think for the most part, this is the most well-rounded figure, as usual. Alright guys, that's about it for this one. This is a bit of a weird but solid wave. Like I said, I'm not that excited for Goldar, as you could pretty easily get it here at GameStop in the US, but if for whatever reason you couldn't get it easily, it is a very good figure. The Black Ranger helmet's imperfect, but Zeo Ranger 5 is a really good figure in my opinion, and a very solid figure for In Space Yellow. So it's a little bit seemingly repetitive, but they're also still new figures, so I would say it's a fairly solid wave. Not one of the waves that's jumping me out of my seat for the whole wave overall, but some solid figures, and we're finally starting to close the the gap on MMPR, as this guy at least completes the core 5. But I think the star for me is Zeo Ranger 5 Red, as that's another one where we don't have too many great figures of it, and I think this is the best one of the bunch in my opinion. So I think if you're interested in these guys, my nitpicks aside, these are some very solid figures to take a look at. Anyways, that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, entering that bell, notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.